Well, shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome, world changers. Here we are again, another night. And today is actually a special day. Thank you very much, Hannah, by the way. It was a beautiful, beautiful piece that you played. Hannah jumps on the keyboard and just plays spontaneously. It's just going with the flow. That's wonderful. So thank you very much, Hannah, for blessing us. Yeah, so a little bit later. Usually Hannah comes about halfway in to do another piece for us. This time, I'm delivering what I've promised for a while, and that is we're going to have other musicians with us. Okay, so and it'll be myself as well. So hang tight, and I hope that there's not going to be any technical difficulties here because again I'm doing something a lot different than what I usually do. So let's just hope and pray it turns out all good. So yes, we will be playing one song. So just hope and pray everything's good. So welcome everyone. Blessings. Take care of all the greetings here first. I see we have a few questions as well. I have a couple interesting comments as usual, and so we'll get to those. So Calamentos says shalom. Shalom, Calamentos. Welcome. Psalm 94 says shalom. Shalom, Psalm 94. Corey says shalom, Brother Chris. Shalom, Brother Corey. Welcome. I'll get to your questions in a minute there, Corey. Billy says shalom. Shalom, Billy. Welcome. Blessings to you. Seek the Lord says shalom. Shalom, seek the Lord. Good to see you. Blessings. The Tower Time says, shalom and howdy, brothers and sisters. Bless y'all. Shalom and howdy. Good to see you. Blessings. God bless you more. Tammy says, shalom all. Shalom, Tammy. Welcome. Great to see you. Blessings to you and your family. And Tammy says, yes, beautiful, Hannah. There you go, Hannah, if you're listening. So, hey, anyways, the Tower Time says, hallelujah, I get to listen to you playing live. I missed the last time, brother. Yeah, all right, there we go. Just in time to hear that beautiful anointed music, Sister Hannah. All right. Well, like I said, Lord willing, in just a little bit, you'll hear some more music, and I hope that you're blessed by it. Okay. So, first things first here, we'll get into I'll deal with the live chat question here. So, Corey says, I have a question for you. There are 15 major religions before Christianity existed, prophesied that Jesus was going to be born in a manger and die on a cross with a crown of thorns. Okay, first things first here, just before I move on, how do you define Christianity? Because 15 major religions before Christianity existed. So my first question is, how do you define Christianity? What is Christianity? I believe it should be defined. I say it should be because there's so many different people have so many different, well, all you got to do is go to church every Sunday and you're a Christian. Or all you got to do is believe in God and you're a Christian. Or, whatever the case is. I think that any Christian should live up to the name of Christian, meaning Christian, someone who is following Christ, someone who is going by the teachings of Jesus and following his example. But you can extend that. You can extend that definition to say anybody who believes in the God of the, as you could say, the God of the Bible, okay, you want to put it that way, or the God of Israel, the same God who, the God of Jesus, and believes in the doctrine and the practices of Jesus. Believes, or you can say those who believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So I think you could extend that definition to BC era. So many Christians would argue Isaiah believed and prophesied about Jesus. He was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities, and the chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we were healed, and the sin, all that kind of thing. most Christians would say that all the prophets or most of the prophets prophesied about Jesus. So if that's the case, then they believe in Jesus. Let me say that one more time. If that's the case, by the way, critical thinking segment as well. I love it. I love it. We're going to talk about certainty, whether or not there is certainty or whether we should be. We'll talk about all that. But anyways, if that's the case, if Isaiah really did foresee Jesus coming, then he believed in Jesus. Wouldn't that make him a Christian? So he would be a Christian 700 years before Christ was born. Jesus said, Abraham saw my day and he was glad. Paul said in Galatians 3 that the gospel was preached to Abraham. What gospel? I believe there's one gospel. One God, one Father, one gospel, one word, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all. So if that's the case, then Abraham was a Christian. Moses was a Christian. See, when Moses appeared on the Mount of Transfiguration, you know the story, Moses, we have no evidence that Moses and Elijah said, oh, wow, you're the Messiah. Great, pleased to meet you. It's like, wow, we never met you before. It's like, no, it seemed like it was a casual thing. It seemed like they all knew each other. And if that's the case, then Moses was a Christian. Enoch was a Christian. Someone might even say that Adam and Eve were Christians, since the gospel was preached to Adam and Eve. Your seed will bruise the serpent's head. We don't have any record of them asking, who are you talking about? What are you talking about? Who? Abel? Would that be? Or if you take the story, even in a very figurative or allegorical, ambiguous sense, you could say it seems like they knew exactly what the prophecy was all about. They knew. So if Jesus is whom the Christians claim that he is, meaning that he is eternal, that he existed before he was born, okay? He existed at least in a spiritual state, and he existed before the creation of the world. And as Christians would tell you, again, if Christians are correct in that Jesus actually was involved in the creation of the world, then the Lord would, when Adam and Eve walked in the Garden of Eden, you could say they probably knew Jesus. They probably didn't know him by that name per se, but they know who he was. And every other patriarch before that. So I would say that Christianity, as it should be defined, started with Adam and Eve. It began with Adam and Eve. So it wasn't, someone might say Christianity was the first religion. Now, I know almost every religion claims to be the first religion, but hey, there's a few thoughts. So even if Christianity existed, as I just mentioned, that if you define it that way, they can exist all the way back to Adam and Eve. It says 15 major religions. I'm not familiar with the enumeration of 15 and exactly how many. It doesn't surprise me that we have different religions. And I know that there are different. Well, let's think about it this way. So let's say Adam and Eve knew Jesus. Abraham knew Jesus. So you'd have to say, where did each one of these 15 religions come from? Did they not come from one of their descendants? Did they not come from one of Adam's descendants? And if so, then they might have received that information, at least some of that information, down through the ages, all the way from the patriarchs of old, from Adam and Eve and Seth and Noah and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moses and all these things, right? All these patriarchs. So one could argue, well, at least ask, where did your religion start and how did it start? And how do you know it started there? Because a lot of people say that Christianity started with, well, some people say Christianity started with Jesus. Other people say Christianity started with, in the book of Acts. In Acts chapter 2, that was the birth of Christianity. Some people might argue that. Some people might argue, and a lot of people argue, and I think that they have a point in a certain way, that Christianity started with Paul. But again, it depends on how you define Christianity. If you define Christianity as I just saw this here over there on the other audio is off. Your mic is off. Okay, just a second. I mean, this is on I know you guys on YouTube you can hear, but this let me just see here. Sorry, guys. See if I can get this working. As I said, we set up a new system, so I kind of expected something to be a little bit different. Where are we going to go here? Where do we go? Okay. All right. Do you hear me over there now? Do you hear me over there? Sorry about that. Yeah. Your mic is off. Yeah, over there on TikTok. Okay. I hope it looks like I'm I see the levels. Anyways, I think you guys hear me now. So I hope we got that. So where was I now? So one could argue that every major religion came from like Noah, or one of those patriarchs, and just kind of split off and developed their own theology, and some, I think, went a little bit more on the off side than on the on side, I think. But yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all if there's any other prophets from other cultures and other remote ancient cultures, and I have heard of those stories that have prophesied things about the coming of Jesus and this kind of thing. So that doesn't surprise me. So the question is, but it is claimed that Christianity is the true religion. Why aren't the other 15 others true? Well, here's the thing. Like, you can have, okay, so let's just say that the same doctrine that Adam and Eve, Seth, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, David, Isaiah believed in is Christianity. Let's just define that as Christianity. So if that's the truth, then again, you can have offshoots. Yeah, you can have offshoots of other, even in the church, for example. We have Marcion that kind of was an offshoot of the true church, but he went right into heresy. And same with lot of other ones. Now, again, you have 45,000 different denominations. So does that mean everything they say is false? No. That just means that they have 45,000 different, they're divided 45,000 different ways, and they cannot tolerate each other, or else they would worship together, but they don't. So my point is, you can have the truth and then have people sway off the path of the truth, still have truth in them, but again, we need a lot of discernment there. So the question is not only what is Christianity, what is true Christianity. The question should be, what are these other religions? And number 3, where did they come from? Number 4, proof, like beyond a reasonable doubt, proof of their historicity. Where, not just what they say, but do we have proof of their history? Where did it come from? Number 5 is what is, quote unquote, a true religion? What is a true religion? It's almost like what is a true preacher or a true teacher as opposed to a false teacher. Like, what is a false teacher? If a false teacher is just somebody who says something that's false, then who doesn't meet that criteria, right? So I don't know of any pastor or any preacher or anybody who hasn't said anything that every single detail, iota of every word that they speak is truth. So does that mean everybody's a false teacher? Or what's a true teacher? What's a true religion? What's a false religion? So in order to answer this question, I'd have to ask, like, what is a true religion? Is a true religion something that is true in 100% of everything they say? 99%? Does that make the cut? What about false religion? Where do you draw the line? Does that mean it have to be completely off in everything? Does that mean that they have to have zero truth in order to be a false religion as opposed to a true religion? How about 20% truth and 80% falsehood? 50-50. Where do you draw the line? So I'd be asking those questions. What's a true religion? When you say, is Christianity true? Or is this other religion true? Or that other religion true? Oh, what do you mean by true? How do you define that? That's how I would ask. That's how I would tackle that, Corey, if people were saying that kind of thing. Corey says, now, I don't have doubts, but every religious story is written in third person. If someone were to prove God exists by saying, well, I've experienced it, the atheist is going to laugh. So how do we prove these? So how do we prove to these people? And this is an excellent question, Corey. There is a lot of proof now in regards to prove God exists. I mean, my first question to somebody would be, what do you accept as proof? What do you accept as evidence? Okay? Because they can they can set a standard that is just unreasonable. Like, well, God can prove that he exists if he appears in the sky and laughs real hard and produces fireworks or what. I mean, stupidity, But I mean, so what do you accept as proof? What is proof? To me, everything is proof. Everything, literally everything is proof. You open your eyes, everything is proof. There's nothing that's not proof to me that God exists. However, I will say this. One of the greatest proofs, maybe I shouldn't use the word proofs because, again, this is subjective. One of the greatest, strongest evidence that we have are people who have their lives changed in a miraculous way. I've said this many times. An atheist would say, well, you just believe in a fairy tale. I would always say, well, wow, that's awesome. Quote unquote fairy tale. Instantly, keyword, instantly, and completely, keyword, completely, instantly and completely set me free from smoking, drinking, drugs, sexual immorality, filthy language, completely changed my heart. I say, if you can produce those same results without God, then you've won me over. If you can produce the exact same results, because that's what science is all about, that reproduction of you need to reproduce, you need to test the scientific method. So if you can reproduce those results, I'm not talking about a little bit of it. I'm not talking about a sliver of it, a fraction of it. But if you can reproduce those exact same results using a fairy tale, then that's it. I'll say you're right. I'll tell the atheists, Hey, I'll join you guys if you can reproduce the same results. Well, yeah, but I quit smoking and I quit drinking without God. I didn't say that. That's not the same results. I'm talking about people, and you can find lots of testimonies like this, right? People like myself instantly and completely set free from the bond, from slavery to sin. Just boom, become a new creation. Not just turned over a new leaf, not just come with one tire and say that you have a car, not come with a steering wheel and say that you have a car. Come with the whole car. Don't come with, well, yeah, but I quit doing this without God. Well, that's not what I'm saying. I want the whole package. I don't want a piece of the car. I want the whole car. So I think that's probably one of the greatest pieces of evidence that a person can present. These are lives that have been radically, totally, completely, and instantly changed by some power. Well, it's just placebo effect, as some of them would say. Well, bless God. If that's a placebo effect, again, my challenge would be this: you can produce, please do it, because the world needs it. Produce a placebo that produces the same results without God. The world needs it. Why aren't you doing it? If it's just a placebo effect, then do it without God, because the world needs it. There are a lot of people out there that have a lot of problems, and they need that freedom, liberty that can only come instantly and completely and thoroughly by the power of the true God. Those are my thoughts there, Corey. It's an excellent question. Thank you for asking. There are two different topics. That's excellent questions there, Corey. Corey says, Christianity to me is someone who reads, follows, and lives by the words and commands of Jesus, the true way, not the way of mainstream churches. That's the way it should be. I guess what I'm asking is, why is Christianity/Judaism considered to be the truest religion, but other religions were considered the other religions that were considered major aren't? Well, again, where do you draw the line, right? Where do you draw the line? So, I mean, most religions that I know of all believe in God, okay? They believe in, a lot of them believe in Jesus. Some of them don't. But then again, what does it mean to believe in God? What does it mean to believe in Jesus? Billy says, how did early Christianity differ from Judaism? I don't think Jesus came to start a new religion. Excellent question, Billy. Excellent question. So, if the 12 disciples were Christians, then they differed nothing from Judaism. There was no difference between what they believed and practiced from first century Judaism. They all went to the synagogue. They all went to the temple. They all did the same thing. They never it's not like, well, we don't sacrifice anymore because Jesus was our. They didn't do that. They continued doing the sacrifices, I believe, until the destruction of the Second Temple. They did everything according to first century Judaism because it was Judaism. The only difference being that they believed that Yeshua was the Messiah. That's about the only difference between first century quote unquote Christianity and first century Judaism. It's really the only difference I can see, at least the only major difference, is that they believed that Yeshua was the Messiah. Other than that, they practiced the same. They obeyed the same commands. They worshiped in the same place. They worshiped the same way. They all sang the same songs. They all sang the same hymns. They all read from the same books, scrolls. So yeah, nothing different. That's an excellent question. One of the greatest again, pieces of evidence of that is in Acts chapter 21, because no, excuse me, Acts chapter 21 is a good one too, because it's they demand that Paul and Paul takes the Nazirite vow, right? Takes the vow that involves the shaving of the head and the offering of the offerings, which are animal sacrifices, by the way. So the leaders of the church followed that. That's Torah, that's Judaism, and that's pretty clear there in Acts chapter 21, as well as Acts chapter 15, where they required the Gentiles to obey those 4 initial laws in order to get their foot on the door, basically. That's Judaism. So we have some pretty clear evidence that first century Christianity was no different from first century Judaism, apart from they believe that Yeshua was the Messiah. But I don't think they believe that Yeshua was the last sacrifice and that they don't have to sacrifice after that. Corey says, people of other religious beliefs say they know their gods exist because if they feel a desire for something, let's say love, for example, they know that specific God is real. Well, I do believe that the truth will set you free. I do believe that one of the greatest pieces of evidence for truth is freedom. If you have people that are locked up into bondage and darkness, if they're locked up in a world of darkness and they claim to have the truth, it's like, well, isn't your truth strong enough to set you free? I would think that the real truth is very powerful and powerful enough to get you back on the derrick, get your life cleaned up and get you living holy, walking in righteousness, living in holiness and all that stuff. Everybody, I think I believe even atheists have gods. They have gods. They just don't call them gods. They have other names for them. Everybody serves something, someone, some things, or some people. They all serve something. They all worship something. Whether they admit it or not, I do believe that everyone does. Everyone worships something. And so, yeah. Excellent questions, guys. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure everything's running smoothly here. For those of you on TikTok, you might have better sound if you go over to YouTube, because I don't think the sound is going to come out very well there on TikTok, especially when we have when we do some live music in just a little bit here. All right. Okay, so a few comments, and then we'll get to the critical thinking segment. I got a short little video from TikTok to play for the critical thinking segment. Very interesting gentleman who says something that's very interesting. So I want to play that, and we'll talk about it for a few minutes, and then we'll get into our music for tonight, and then Josephus as well. Okay, so here's the first comment that I'd like to respond to. So this is PAO, says, Paul did nothing wrong. Not sure what this person is actually referring to. it sounds like an absolute claim, an absolute statement, like Paul is just absolutely like just an angel. He never did anything wrong. But this kind of proves what we've been saying all along, right? You have some people who this is their mentality. This is how they look at it. It's like Paul would never say anything that's not true. He would never do anything wrong. He is our perfect example. He's like basically the Messiah. He's like basically their Messiah. Like they follow Paul and not Jesus. And so I'm not sure they're PAO exactly what you're referring to, but Paul did nothing wrong sounds like an extreme statement to me. Now, this is interesting, this next one. Well, thank you very much, PAO. Thank you very much. This is an interesting one here from Peter the Pekea. Peter the Pekea. Now, he said, 1 Timothy verse 9, the law is for the heathens. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, I looked it up myself because I'm thinking 1 Timothy verse 9, I think he left the chapter out, but I think he's talking about 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 9. So in that, if that's the case, Peter makes a really good point here. And I'll show you guys what I mean by that. 1 Timothy, where are we here? 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 9 says something. And the reason why this strikes me, and I never saw this before. This is the first time I saw this. And it strikes me because we have so many people who say, well, the law is only for the Jews. The law is only for the Jews. Okay? And so Peter comes in and says, no, the law is for the heathens. Okay, so 1 Timothy verse 1, or chapter 1 verse 9, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners, for unholy and profane, for murderers and of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers. Okay, and it goes on and lists a whole bunch of things here. So very interesting concept there, Peter, that you bring forward, because it is in line with their cultural way of thinking. Is if you are a sinner, you're a heathen. Even if you are biologically a descendant of Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you're still considered to be a Gentile, at least spiritually speaking, if you are in that state of sin. Whereas if you're righteous, then you are considered to be Jewish, whether or not you're biologically a Jew. So this is a very interesting statement. Kind of strikes me. It does. Yes. So the law is for the heathens. Yes. Well, I would say the law is for everybody, but again, what do you mean by the law is for? Because if you are living according to the law perfectly, and by the way, it's so easy. It's really, really easy. It's just super easy. Babies do it. You live according to the law, then, do you need the law if you live according to the law? There's the question, right? So if you live according to the law, if you live in line with the law 100%, everything's all fine and dandy, do you need the law? So do you need the written law if you already align yourself with it in your heart and your mind and your spirit? There's the question. It's almost like, did a tree make a sound if no one heard it? It's the same kind of question. This is another very interesting one. This is a super interesting comment. So let me think of the, because I don't have the context here. The context of this is John, the Gospel of John, chapter 3, talking about being born again. Now, this is very interesting, and I asked this gentleman for him to give me a little bit more information on this, to expound on this. And so this is what he said in regards to the whole born again passage in John, the Gospel of John. He said also, unless Jesus was speaking in Greek, it's hard to believe that conversation even happened. The puns in those verses don't translate to Aramaic. Think about that for a minute. So it seems like this particular gentleman has knowledge of Aramaic and of Greek. So I asked him for more information on that. Last I checked, he didn't respond. But isn't that an interesting statement? I think that's very interesting. The puns in the Gospel of John chapter 3, especially in regards to being born again. Now, I do believe that born again is a legit concept from the Tanakh. I do believe that. It's just semantics, right? Just the way it's put, the way the figures of speech that are used there. But he makes a really good point. This particular person makes a good point, if indeed it's true. Assuming that it's true, this is an excellent point. This is like scholarly level stuff. And once again, Benjamin, I appreciate your positive comment here. A short but powerful insight, brother. You covered so much in so few words. Thank you very much, Benjamin. And one more from Mewa says, amazing, mind blown. Goodness gracious, thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Mewa. Appreciate you. Love you, brother. So he's responding to the short video that was posted. Actually, it's a repost of an older video in which I talk about the 3 categories of sin, or the as I would sometimes call it, the trinity of sin, right? The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, and how that existed in Eden, and how that's how the devil tempted Jesus according to the Gospels. And that was all completely reversed in the story of the crucifixion. So there you have it. So we'll do the critical thinking segment here, and then we'll do some live music as we've never done before. Okay, we have more than just Hannah with us this time. More than just Hannah with us. Hopefully it turns out okay. So once again, please understand, this is the first time I'm doing this, so it may not, hopefully it's good. Okay, so anyways, just before that, this particular gentleman, goes by the name, actually, it looks like it's his wife's account. And she posts, I'm not sure, maybe it's not his wife, maybe it's his daughter. I'm sorry if I, sorry, I just don't know. But this particular, this account is found on TikTok, Debs Ahoy. Debs Ahoy. I ran across this. I'm thinking, man, I just kind of talk about music, kind of played it just strung a chord for me. I thought this would be a great thing to talk about tonight in the critical thinking segment. So here's this gentleman. What is an optimist? Actually, you know what? Just give me a second. Give me a second here. So, I think. Okay. Just a second here. This is the one. Actually, what is an optimist is not the one. This is the one. Curse of... This is an interesting, very interesting one here. Just give me a second here. Super interesting. Yeah, here we are. Curse of certainty. The curse of certainty. Okay. I hope I can get this so you guys can hear. I'll play this. It's about 3 minutes, and I'll play this. I'll give you a little bit of my own insight on this. Let me know what you guys think in the chat. By the way, we have Joshua says, Shalom family, Shalom Christopher, Shalom Joshua, good to see you, welcome. Great Deception says, Shalom everyone. Shalom Alan, welcome, good to see you. Okay, check this out. I hope you guys can hear this.
Martin, what do you mean by the curse of certainty?
Well, certainty isn't a natural feature of nature. Nature doesn't afford us any certainty, not even in mathematics. As I explained in the last video, Gödel's incompleteness theorem says that we really can't be certain of any of our systems, our mental systems, mathematics, probability theory, whatever. So there is no certainty, and yet, as human beings, we crave certainty. I'll get onto that in a moment. So certainty is a curse because people who are certain become dogmatic. When they become dogmatic, they can, and very often do, become violent. You only have to look at the religious wars, the Christian wars in the Middle Ages, the Spanish Inquisition. They all did it because they were certain. And these days, it's the Islamic extremists who are certain of their cause. So certainty is not a good thing. It leads human beings to act in ways that are destructive and cruel. Of course, these days we have the new high priests, the scientists, who are claiming certain certainties. The universe began with the Big Bang and so on. So it's very dangerous. It's much better to have what I call a don't know box in your mind. Is there a God? I don't know. The atheists are just as dogmatic and certain as the religious people. So is there a God? I don't know. How did the universe begin? I don't know. There are some theories, but I don't know. The reason people can't live with I don't know is because their needy little egos want something to hang on to. So they may be hanging on to science, they may be hanging on to religion, they may be hanging on to all kinds of things, political ideology or whatever. They're all ultimately, if people are certain, those things are ultimately going to lead to dogma, which in turn will possibly lead to violence.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that, guys. Again, new setup here. So, yes. So, certainty. I think we should always avoid being like 100% certain about anything. I know that. Philosophically speaking, in lots of the minds of philosophers, they would tell you there is no such thing as being 100% certain about anything. And I know a lot of people, they want to be certain. It's like there's a craving to be certain, and some of that, at least some of that, could be just a like pride or arrogance thing. It's like, I know for sure, 100% certain. But I think that we should always have that, what that particular gentleman called the I don't know box. And I think it's really good to have a bigger I don't know box than a smaller one. But when it comes to the degrees of certainty, I do think that we should keep in mind that there are dynamics involved. Like they would say, like at the very bottom is a remote possibility, or remote possibility or probability, and up from there would be remote possibility, and then highly improbable, then not expected, then remotely likely, and then uncertain, then possible, then more likely than not, then reasonably possible, then probable, then likely, then reasonable evidence, then reasonably expected, and up from there reasonable assurance, up from there expected, up from there reasonably certain, and higher than that would be highly likely, then highly probable, then virtually certain, and then the very top of it would be assurance beyond any reasonable doubt. Notice that there's no 100% certainty. So this several years ago, when I followed this court trial, very high-profile court trial, very closely, one of the things that the judge said to the jury at the very end is, there's no such thing as 100% certainty on anything. He said what you should do is come to a conclusion based upon beyond a reasonable doubt. So, you always have room for the possibility of being wrong. You always have room for that. So I thought that was a very interesting video there, and also it's something that we need to keep in mind as well. Oh, there we go again on TikTok. There's no sound. Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. We have a different setup here tonight, and so we're experiencing technical difficulties. Those of you on TikTok, I'm not sure if you're able to do. We have a group here, and we're going to be singing or playing live music. We're going to do one song, and then I'm going to come back and do the reading for tonight, which would be Flavius Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews. So we're going to do one song live, and it's a different setup. So yeah, thank you very much over there. Thank you very much, Truth Over Tradition, for letting me know. Appreciate that. And First Century Believer as well. Thank you. Okay, Billy says, there is a book by Peter Enns called The Sin of Certainty, Why God Desire Our Trust More Than Our Correct Beliefs. Great book. Wow, sounds like a good one, Billy. Yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah. There you go. There's some food for thought. There's some food for thought. Okay, so I think let me do a quick little check to see everything is on par here. Okay. Okay. Here we are. Wow. 1, 2, 1. Wait, hold on a second. 2, 3, 4. We choose the fear of the Lord. We choose the fear of the Lord. For the fear of the Lord is to hate all evil. We choose the fear of the Lord. We choose the fear of the Lord. We choose the way of the Lord. We choose the way of the Lord. For the way of the Lord is the way of wisdom. We choose the way of the Lord. We choose the way of the Lord. He who delights in the word of the Lord shall be blessed in all of his ways. For the friendship of God is with those who fear him. So we choose the fear. We choose the way. We choose the word of the Lord. We choose the word of the Lord. We choose the word of the Lord. For the word of the Lord shall endure forever. We choose the word of the Lord. We choose the word of the Lord. He who delights in the word of the Lord shall be blessed in all of his ways. For the friendship of God is with those who fear him. So we choose the fear of the Lord. Choose the way of the Lord. Choose the word of the Lord. Well, there you have it. We choose the fear of the Lord. We choose the way of the Lord. We choose the word of the Lord. For the fear of the Lord is to hate all evil. The way of the Lord is the way of wisdom. The word of the Lord shall endure forever. Truth over tradition, says beautiful psalm. Thank you very much. Tower Time says, loved it. Thank you, Tower Time. Calamento says, wow, awesome team. Thank you. Billy says, absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Billy. Lord willing, we'll have a lot more music from the team. Tower Time says, I hope you can make one of those shorts with that. That's a good idea there, Tower Time. All right. Okay. So, moving on here. The video, we're going to have a... Tammy says that was beautiful. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Thank you, Tammy. Okay. Okay, so our I got a pre-recorded reading tonight of Flavius Josephus, so we'll play that and we'll come back to discuss this. Once again, Josephus is very interesting in all of his little tidbits that he throws in there that we don't read of in the scripture. I think it's interesting to know his rendition of the Tanakh, and so this is what we're doing. So here we are. We'll come back to discuss this a little bit after the reading. Flavius Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, Book 3, Chapter 7, concerning the garments of the priests and of the high priest. There were peculiar garments appointed for the priests, and for all the rest, which they call koineo, priestly garments, as also for the high priests, which they call koineo rabbe, and denote the high priest's garments. Such was therefore the habit of the rest. But when the priest approaches the sacrifices, he purifies himself with the purification which the law prescribes. And, in the first place, he puts on that which is called makanese, which means somewhat that is fast tied. It is a girdle composed of fine twined linen, and is put about the private parts, the feet being to be inserted into them in the nature of breeches, but above half of it is cut off, and it ends at the thighs, and is there tied fast. Over this he wore a linen vestment made of fine flax doubled, which is called kethon, and denotes linen, for we call linen by the name of kethon. This vestment reaches down to the feet, and sits close to the body, and has sleeves that are tied fast to the arms. It is guided to the breast a little above the elbows, by a girdle, often going round, 4 fingers broad, but so loosely woven, that you would think it were the skin of a serpent. It is embroidered with flowers of scarlet, and purple, and blue, and fine twined linen. But the warp was nothing but fine linen. The beginning of its circumvolution is at the breast, and when it has gone often round, it is there tied, and hangs loosely there down to the ankles. I mean this, all the time the priest is not about any laborious service, for in this position it appears in the most agreeable manner to the spectators. But when he is obliged to assist at the offering sacrifices, and to do the appointed service, that he may not be hindered in his operations by its motion, he throws it to the left, and bears it on his shoulder. Moses indeed calls this belt Albaneth, but we have learned from the Babylonians to call it Emiah, for so it is by them called. This vestment has no loose or hollow parts anywhere in it, but only a narrow aperture about the neck, and it is tied with certain strings hanging down from the edge over the breast and back, and is fastened above each shoulder, and is called mazabazanes. Upon his head he wears a cap, not brought to a conic form, nor encircling the whole head, but still covering more than half of it, which is called masnamthes, and its make is such that it seems to be a crown, being made of thick swaths. But the contexture is of linen, and it is doubled round many times, and sewed together, besides which a piece of fine linen covers the whole cap from the upper part, and reaches down to the forehead, and hides the seams of the swaths, which would otherwise appear indecently. This adheres closely upon the solid part of the head, and is thereto so firmly fixed that it may not fall off during the sacred service about the sacrifices. So we have now shown you what is the habit of the generality of the priests. The high priest is indeed adorned with the same garments that we have described, without abating one. Only over these he puts on a vestment of a blue color. This also is a long robe reaching to his feet. In our language it is called mayir, and is tied round with a girdle, embroidered with the same colors and flowers as the former, with a mixture of gold interwoven. To the bottom of which garment are hung fringes, in color like pomegranates, with golden bells by a curious and beautiful contrivance, so that between two bells hangs a pomegranate, and between two pomegranates a bell. Now this vesture was not composed of two pieces, nor was it sewed together upon the shoulders and the sides, but it was one long vestment, so woven as to have an aperture for the neck, not an oblique one, but parted all along the breast and the back. A border also was sewed to it, lest the aperture should look too indecently. It was also parted where the hands were to come out. Besides these, the high priest put on a third garment, which was called the ephod, which resembles the epomis of the Greeks. Its make was after this manner. It was woven to the depth of a cubit, of several colors, with gold intermixed and embroidered, but it left the middle of the breast uncovered. It was made with sleeves also, nor did it appear to be at all differently made from a short coat. But in the void place of this garment there was inserted a piece of the bigness of a span, embroidered with gold, and the colors of the ephod was called esen, the breastplate, which in the Greek language signifies the oracle. This piece exactly filled up the void space in the ephod. It was united to it by golden rings at every corner, the like rings being annexed to the ephod, and a blue riband was made use of to tie them together by those rings. And that the space between the rings might not appear empty, they contrived to fill it up with stitches of blue ribands. There were also 2 sardonyxes upon the ephods at the shoulders, to fasten it in the nature of buttons, having each end running to the sardonyxes of gold, that they might be buttoned by them. On these were engraved the names of the sons of Jacob, in our own country letters, and in our own tongue, 6 on each of the stones, on either side, and the elder sons' names were on the right shoulder. 12 stones also there were upon the breastplate, extraordinary in largeness and beauty, and they were an ornament not to be purchased by men because of their immense value. These stones, however, stood in 3 rows by 4 in a row, and were inserted into the breastplate itself, and they were set in ouches of gold that were themselves inserted into the breastplate, and were so made that they might not fall out. Now the first 3 stones were a sardonyx, a topaz, and an emerald. The second row contained a carbuncle, a jasper, and sapphire. The first of the third row was a ligure, then an amethyst, and the third an agate, being the 9th of the whole number. The first of the fourth row was a chrysolite, the next was an onyx, and then a beryl, which was last of all. Now the names of all those sons of Jacob were engraven in these stones, whom we esteem the heads of our tribes, each stone having the honor of a name, in the order according to which they were born. And whereas the rings were too weak of themselves to bear the weight of the stones, they made 2 other rings of a larger size, at the edge of that part of the breastplate which reached to the neck, and inserted into the very texture of the breastplate, to receive chains finely wrought, which connected them with golden bands to the tops of the shoulders, whose extremity turned backwards and went into the ring on the prominent back part of the ephod. And this was for the security of the breastplate, that it might not fall out of its place. There was also a girdle sewed to the breastplate, which was of the aforementioned colors, with gold intermixed, which, when it had gone once round, was tied again upon the seam and hung down. There were also golden loops that admitted its fringes at each extremity of the girdle and included them entirely. The high priest's mitre was the same that we described before, and was wrought like that of all the other priests, above which there was another, with swaths of blue embroidered, and round it was a golden crown polished, of 3 rows, one above another, out of which arose a cup of gold, which resembled the herb which we call saccharus. But those Greeks that are skillful in botany call it hyoscyamus. Now, lest any one that has seen this herb, but has not been taught its name, and is unacquainted with its nature, or, having known its name, knows not the herb when he sees it, I shall give such as these are a description of it. This herb is oftentimes in tallness above 3 spans, but its root is like that of a turnip. For he that should compare it thereto would not be mistaken, but its leaves are like the leaves of a mint. Out of its branches it sends out calyx, cleaving to the branch, and a coat encompasses it, which it naturally puts off when it is changing, in order to produce its fruit. This calyx is of the bigness of the bone of the little finger, but in the compass of its aperture is like a cup. This I will further describe, for the use of those that are unacquainted with it. Suppose a sphere is divided into 2 parts, round at the bottom, but having another segment that grows up to a circumference from that bottom. Suppose it become narrower by degrees, and that the cavity of that part grow decently smaller, and then gradually grow wider again at the brim, such as we see in the navel of a pomegranate with its notches. And indeed such a coat grows over this plant as renders it a hemisphere, and that, as one may say, turned accurately in a lathe, and having its notches extant above it, which, as I said, grow like a pomegranate, only that they are sharp, and end in nothing but prickles. Now the fruit is preserved by this coat of the calyx, which fruit is like the seed of the herb sideritis. It sends out a flower that may seem to resemble that of a poppy. Of this was a crown made, as far from the hinder part of the head to each of the temples. But this ephilis, for so this calyx may be called, did not cover the forehead, but it was covered with a golden plate, which had inscribed upon it the name of God in sacred characters. And such were the ornaments of the high priest. Now here one may wonder at the ill will which men bear to us, and which they profess to bear on account of our despising that deity which they pretend to honor. For if any one do but consider the fabric of the tabernacle, and take a view of the garments of the high priest, and of the vessels which we make use of in our sacred ministration, he will find that our legislator was a divine man, and that we are unjustly reproached by others. For if any one do without prejudice, and with judgment look upon these things, he will find they were every one made in way of imitation and representation of the universe. When Moses distinguished the tabernacle into 3 parts, and allowed 2 of them to the priests as a place accessible and common, he denoted the land and the sea, these being of general access to all. But he set apart the 3rd division for God, because heaven is inaccessible to men. And when he ordered 12 loaves to be set on the table, he denoted the year as distinguished into so many months. By branching out the candlestick into 70 parts, he secretly intimated the decani, or 70 divisions of the planets, and as to the 7 lamps upon the candlesticks, they referred to the course of the planets, of which that is the number. The veils, too, which were composed of 4 things, they declared the 4 elements, for the fine linen was proper to signify the earth, because the flax grows out of the earth. The purple signified the sea, because that color is dyed by the blood of a sea shellfish. The blue is fit to signify the air, and the scarlet will naturally be an indication of fire. Now the vestment of the high priest, being made of linen, signified the earth. The blue denoted the sky, being like lightning in its pomegranates, and in the noise of the bells resembling thunder. And for the ephod, it showed that God had made the universe of 4 elements. And as for the gold interwoven, I suppose it related to the splendor by which all things are enlightened. He also appointed the breastplate to be placed in the middle of the ephod to resemble the earth, for that has the very middle place of the world. And the girdle which encompassed the high priest round signified the ocean, for that goes round about and includes the universe. Each of the sardonyxes declares to us the sun and the moon, those, I mean, that were in the nature of buttons on the high priest's shoulders. And for the 12 stones, whether we understand by them the months, or whether we understand the like number of the signs of that circle which the Greeks call the zodiac, we shall not be mistaken in their meaning. And for the mitre, which was of a blue color, it seems to me to mean heaven. For how otherwise could the name of God be inscribed upon it? That it was also illustrated with the crown, and that of gold also, is because of that splendor with which God is pleased. Let this explication suffice at present, since the course of my narration will often, and on many occasions, afford me the opportunity of enlarging upon the virtue of our legislator. All right. So there we are. There we have it for the reading for tonight. Yeah, lots of little details here and there about the appearance of the priestly garments and all these little things that, I don't know about you guys, but some of these things I don't see in the scriptures at all. But, it's very interesting. The colors, as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, you get these depictions and drawings of what it might have looked like, and you got people even play the part of like the high priest, and would they actually be wearing a garment that looks so beautiful? Like the way Josephus describes this is very beautiful, very, very beautiful clothing. That's for sure. So sometimes I wonder if these people, and I know that some of them wouldn't, but I wonder how many of them actually would look into these kind of details, like from Josephus or any other historical resources, to get all these details out of it. So, yeah, so there you have it. Very, very interesting. So we'll wrap it up for tonight. Again, last call for any of you that would be, if you have any prayer requests or any last minute quick questions, we'll take that. If not, we'll be back, Lord willing, again tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Eastern, as always. If you're not following or if you're not subscribed yet, please do. And leave a like as well. Okay, y'all? Love you guys. Keep on calling on him. He will show you great and mighty things. And we'll see you again tomorrow evening. Have a blessed evening / day wherever you are. Love you guys. I'll see you again tomorrow. As always, I pray the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face to shine upon you, lift up his countenance upon you, and give you wonderful, wonderful shalom. Amen, amen. I'll see you guys tomorrow.